Welcome. This is Brian Calle with Breaking It Down with Brian Calle for the Orange County Register and freedompolitics.com. Today I have a very distinguished guest. He's a former state senator for the state of California, a 5-time United States Congressman, the finance director for the state of California, and he has his law degree from Harvard and his PhD from the University of Chicago. I feel inadequate sharing a stage with a man who's running for the governor of the state of California, Mr. Tom Campbell. Tom, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Brian, and it is I who feel inadequate to be in these august surroundings and to be with you.
Great, well it's so great to have you here today. I wanted to ask you a couple questions because you're running for governor of California. First of all, you know, the state's in a shambles. Why would you even consider running for the governor?
I've spent my whole life in public service or as a teacher. So this is the most important thing I can do to try to help the state. And the state's needs right now are all related to jobs and the economy, and that's my field. So that's why. I'm teaching right now at Chapman right here in Orange County, and it's a great opportunity for me to get to help by sharing what experiences I have in my public life with students. So education, public service, that's all I've done my whole career.
Great. So what do you think the biggest issue facing the state of California might be today?
It's the jobs situation and the budget of the state, which has been so bad for jobs. So if we get the state budget straightened out, then folks with jobs to offer will come back to our state. If we continue to spend more than we have, if we continue to overregulate, kill businesses who have jobs to offer by regulating them to death, then those jobs will go elsewhere.
Okay, so how would you fix that? What would be your plan to fix something like that?
It's pretty straightforward if you study what Ronald Reagan did as president. Well, I was happy to be part of Ronald Reagan's first administration. I was serving as the director of the Bureau of Competition. And what President Reagan did was to say no new regulations that don't pass a cost-benefit test. What a concept. You actually have to ask, does a regulation do more harm than good? Then I don't want it. If it does more good than harm, I want it. To apply that test, focusing on jobs, is what I would do as governor.
Okay, interesting. What about the spending? It seems that our state government, our state legislators, our assembly people, our senators, and even the governor have gone on a wild spending spree. We've seen it at the federal level, but it seems to be more apparent even in our own state.
Well, it is because we can't print money, so the federal government, let me tell you, is even worse. If you take the amount of debt that's owed by the federal government and divide it by how much we're paying back every year, it'll take 293 years to pay back what we owe with the federal government. In the state of California, it'll only take 84 years, so we're looking fiscally responsible by comparison. The size of government, the amount of spending, is a killer for jobs, because those with jobs to offer know that if we continue to increase the size of government, we'll continue to draw from them and take tax money from them to pay for it. And so they'll go to Texas or Nevada, and all of us know stories about jobs going to those other states. So that's the problem. Now how you fix it, Graham Rudman, you might remember that from the federal government. The last time the federal government balanced its budget was the year 2000. It was my last year in Congress, and we actually got the federal government to balance because there was a law that said if you don't cut, then there's an automatic across-the-board cut that will go in. We ought to apply that to the state of California. Here's the number of dollars we have. If you spend more than that, it automatically cuts down to where we have the money.
Interesting. Other big issues facing the state of California: education being paramount, being a more competitive educational environment, both just in our own state and, I guess, globally. How would you fix our education dilemma?
I've been a professor for, the last 26 years. And I'm a better teacher when I have fewer students in my class. And that can apply very, very succinctly, easy to understand, and easy to implement. We need to lower class size in the state of California. Instead, because of our present budget crisis, we're going the other way. We're increasing class size. We're number 50 among all 50 states in the average classroom size, numbers of students in a classroom, K through 12. That's really terrible. So fix education by hiring teachers. Don't fire them, except bad teachers. Fire bad teachers, reward good teachers, but don't use the budget as a way of firing more teachers. Instead, lower class size. And the results are going to show the dollars invested can be spent much more wisely that way. Even if you look at the results in other states, we're right now 48th and 49th in English and mathematics, but we're 26th in how much money we spend per pupil. So we're right in the middle on money, but we're in these terribly large classrooms.
Would you favor a school choice program or some type of similar program for the state of California?
For the very low income, I would. And what I proposed is start out with the 2% or the 1% lowest income parents, because for them, their children are almost with the same degree of certainty in the worst schools. If you give those parents a scholarship, they can send their children to a private school or a parochial school, enough to pay, then that has two beneficial effects. One, their children might get a better education, and secondly, the school from which they're leaving will be given a huge financial incentive to straighten up. I would start that way. Brian, if we go farther than that, it would only be because it was working. The criticism of going to 100% right away, which is what the voters rejected several times, is that you put at risk the entire school system if it doesn't work. Let's start with the children of parents at the very most needy, and if it works, we can expand it. If it doesn't, we've at least tried to help them.
So aside from a school choice program, one of the issues that seems to be impacting the budget, jobs, the amount of money the state legislature is spending, and education, seems to be public employee unions. Yeah. What are your thoughts on public employee unions, and how do we get this right in our state?
They're very powerful. So I was finance director, I was a state senator, and even as a congressman, I saw the power of the public employee unions. And they have a substantial amount of influence in what happens because of their power within the Democratic Party in the legislature. That's the truth. So a governor can exercise a line item veto, and as long as 1/3 of one of the two houses is not under the control of those who follow the public employee union's directions, I hope I'm being clear without being unfair, you can sustain the line item veto. So a governor who's prepared to be financially responsible can bring down spending by the line item veto. That will allow us to bring down taxes and hopefully get people to offer jobs in our state again. Second, I try to work, if possible, to get some give-backs in existing contracts. So the fact that the state has agreed to pay a certain salary, and they agreed when the economy was good, doesn't mean we should continue that automatically if the economy is no longer good. Private sector does this all the time. You reopen a contract and renegotiate it.
What about a paycheck protection type plan?
I favored it. I favor it again. It was defeated, as you might remember, in the 2005 election. But for those of watching who may not remember what it means, it's this, that a public employee union member has to identify a yes. You can't just be assumed to be a yes for any portion of her or his union dues going to political purposes. Because otherwise, you will contribute to the union, some of it will go to political purposes, maybe a lot of it, and you may not share those political purposes at all. The federal law requires your approval, but the way this has been interpreted in the state, your approval is assumed unless you take the step to opt out. Paycheck protection says, no, we're going to ask you, and you tell us, do you want your union dues to go for political purposes or not?
And let me ask you one last question, which is a big issue for the state, a big issue nationally, especially this week. Energy. Energy is a huge issue. How would you improve policies in the state of California that would help our energy system, and also, would they help or hinder the environment?
Nuclear. We need to have much more nuclear. It's a clean process, doesn't produce any greenhouse gases. The storage issue is increasingly being solved, not only through breeder reactor technology, but also the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory is about to fire up its fusion reactor, which uses the processed uranium from the fission reactors. And it's a huge part of the rest of the world. France produces over 70% of its energy by nuclear, and we're way, way behind. So it has no greenhouse gases. It doesn't put particulates or carbon dioxide or sulfur dioxide into the air like a coal-fired plant would. Relatively speaking, it is still at the affordable level, though at the high end of the affordable level. But we haven't been allowed to permit a nuclear plant in over 20 years.
Well, now that we've solved all of the problems for the state of California, is there anything else you wanted to add before we head out of here?
Just that I'd really be delighted if any of your viewers go to my website, campbell.org. I blog every day. I respond personally. Those are my answers, my words, me doing the typing. And that's the best way I can think to connect with the people of California.
Great. Well, it's my pleasure to have you here, and I'm glad we were able to do this, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you, Brian. A
Pleasure. Thanks for tuning in.